The point I wanted to say was this. Go to Saudi Arabia, yeah? I know people, my chef has gone to Saudi Arabia, he lived there, he studied there. Do you know when there are issues with regards to fornication, and there's two people, and they've never been married, and the punishment is to lash them, do you know what the scholars do? They give them 1,000 excuses. They're like, and these are like the Wahhabis, yeah? The Wahhabis. This is real experience. It's like, are you sure you did it? Do you know what you mean by sex? No, you don't, do you? Are you sure? It's almost like that. It's because in Sharia we know. Because look, you can't take a verse and run away with it. Yeah? Just like we can't take Western philosophers and take a statement and just justify our beliefs with it and just run away with it. That's not a newest discussion. In any type of philosophy, religious or irreligious, texts are four-dimensional. They link with each other. And that's how we should express each philosophy. Let it speak for itself. You're lying. For example, I know, inverted commas, Wahhabi sheikhs. And I remember students used to come to them and say, but the Prophet said this. And he would even say, Islam is not just one statement. It's a whole corpus of material that you take into perspective and you move forward with it. Just like John Stuart Mill. I could use John Stuart Mill in the Western tradition and say, you know what? I could justify curtailing freedom of speech. That's liberal blasphemy. Because what did John Stuart Mill say in Thomas Paine? That you can't go against the moral norms of society. It's in their books. Now, you may say you've misinterpreted. But that's the point here. See where you just proved my point. The point is, I can take and misinterpret a statement in outside of the context of the philosophy. Just like what you're doing. Have an honest discussion. And by the way, if you know nothing about Sharia law and the conditions and stuff, just say, Hamza, teach me. And if I don't know something about Wittgenstein, I'll say, Peter, teach me. That's how you connect, rather than having these kind of outdated cliches that frankly, Muslims and non-Muslims have had enough with.
I'm going to limit the answers to 2 minutes, mainly for Hamza. Pass it over.
Hello, I have a question. I hope it's not weird. You didn't answer it before. If you did, I'm sorry. I was wondering, Islam claims that we live in a limited period of time and that it will determine the afterlife, which is eternal. But if you live, for example, if you are lucky with 80 years is nothing compared to the eternity. For example, in math, if you would divide 80 years by eternity, the result would be 0. So why should I believe that I live in an infinitely short period of time? The mathematical likelihood that I live in an infinitely short period of time, which would determine the rest of eternity, is infinitely small.
Okay, very simply, what I've understood by the question is you get this a lot, it's saying you live for a limited period of time to dictate what happens for eternity. Yeah? I mean, the way the Muslim theologians have dealt with this in the past is, for example, you do a limited amount of evil or sin, but you get punished forever. That's unjust. That doesn't make any sense. Well, the way we deal with it from an Islamic theological perspective, and to be honest, I don't have the answers to this specifically. This is the minimal reading I have done, and maybe there's Muslims in the audience that could educate us. Is that when people get to eternity, they actually would agree with their own state. Because we don't believe in a way that actually God, in a way, directly has given you an eternal punishment per se. Rather, we believe it's our own hands have done that. It's our responsibility. It's all about responsibility and accountability with regards to the human existence.
That's not really my question.
Okay, what's your question?
My question was the mathematical likelihood, because 80 years compared to eternity is nothing.
Yes.
And the mathematical likelihood that we live in this infinitely short period of time is nothing. I should be 10,000 trillion years in hell eating from the tree of Zakum, which makes my tummy grip a car or whatever.
Sure.
Why am I not there now? Or for billions and billions of years, why am I still in an infinitely short period of time?
I don't know what you mean by infinitely short period of time. What is that?
Unlimitedly short period of time.
Okay.
It's the mathematical likelihood that
Sure.
now,
To be honest,
this moment is
yeah.
right now. I don't.
To be honest, I don't really understand the question. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Maybe you could explain it a bit more. I mean, for us, we believe you have a short period of life, you die, then it's eternity. I don't see where the problem is.
As an angel who stands above time. If he wants to know if you are now in heaven in the afterlife or in this life, for him it would be 100% sure that if he asks God if you are in the afterlife now or in this life. And for him, if you ask God, he knows already beforehand, the answer would be that you are in the afterlife, because the afterlife is eternity, and this life is just 80 years. So
oh, I see what you're saying. I think the way to deal with that is saying the afterlife is potentially infinite, not actually infinite. That's the way you deal with it. Okay, we both understand each other. Basically, you've assumed that the afterlife is eternity, but it's in a state of infinite, yeah? All possible time and numbers, whatever, have already happened. But what we're saying is that eternity from our perspective is always reaching to a point of potentially infinite. So at time is always adding on. You're assuming it's already infinite. That's probably a wrong assumption. That's my point. It's all metaphysics for you, isn't it?
This question, I believe, can be for both speakers. How do you reconcile the idea of a loving God with the problem of evil? I think I'll give you...
As usual, I'll give a pithy answer compared to Hamza. We can't. And so that's very good evidence to show there is not a loving God or Allah as such.
Okay, good, thank you. Can I use the whiteboard for this very quickly? Okay. Okay, this is probably the best atheist argument. That's why I'm standing up here. So, now the problem of evil is very interesting because you have it. Even Muslims have questions about this and Christians. Now the logical form is in the following way, right? An all-powerful, good God exists. Okay. 2, evil and suffering exists. 3, therefore, an all-powerful good God doesn't exist. Okay? This is the logical form of the problem of evil, okay? Now, atheists will say, if evil and suffering exists, he's either impotent, he's not all-powerful, he can't do anything about it, or he's allowing it and therefore he's evil. That's the conclusions from the logical form of the problem of evil. But there's some daring assumptions here, brothers, sisters, and friends. And the daring assumption is that you're just assuming God is just powerful and just good. That's an assumption. Because we have what we call in Islam, that's why the concept of God in Islam is quite powerful. So we believe God is all-wise, as an example. And we could argue that even a suffering happens as a result of His wisdom. Now you may say, but I can't see the wisdom in a baby being put through a mincemeat machine. That's what Saddam Hussein did, by the way. I don't see the wisdom in that. However, just because you can't see the wisdom, it doesn't mean it's not there. That's an argument from ignorance, called argumentum ad ignorantiam. It's a logical fallacy. So we can deal with it by having a relationship with all the attributes, names and attributes of God, and really kind of bringing out who God is from an Islamic perspective that deals with this point. That He's not just good and just all-powerful. That's why, like, my dad mentions this sometimes, bless him, he says, God is just love. Well, if He's just love, then He can't be powerful. Or He's impotent, or He's allowing bad things to happen. Or that means you're giving divine attributes to human beings that they could do their own action, and God can't control it and intervene, or etc. There's a lot of huge logical problems with that, philosophical problems with that. But if you deal with this way, it's slightly more powerful. The other point, I'm going to wrap up right now. The point here that really undermines the whole thing is this: evil and suffering exist. I would ask Peter Gabriel, how do you know evil and suffering exist? Because I can feel it. Because I know. He's assuming moral properties, value properties here. To believe this is even objective, it requires God's existence as an ontological grounding, as a foundation for objective good and suffering. So you can argue that the argument here itself requires God to be in the picture, because if evil and suffering are really real, then it requires God's existence from an ontological perspective, i.e. the rational grounding for truly evil things and truly bad things. It necessitates God's existence, as Immanuel Kant alluded to in one of his more arguments. If he says, well, it's relatively evil, then it's a probabilistic argument. And he says probably he doesn't exist, which is not really a strong argument. And the final thing, just to add, is that emotionally we can deal with this better than an atheist does. If a child suffers cancer all its life, it just dies and it worms me. We believe in Islam that any child, regardless if it's Peter Cave's or mine, will go to paradise. See, so we have emotional concepts that deal with this as well in a positive way. But the way to deal with this argument is say, look, there's other names and attributes of God that you can reconcile with reality. And secondly, you're assuming even the suffering are objective. In order to do that, it necessitates God's existence in the first place. Because that's the only conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity to understand objective evil and suffering. Sorry. There you go. I think that's how you deal with the problem of evil. There's other things, like that duality and all this big philosophy, but that's another thing.
I think Peter wants to make a... Do you want to?
Well, I suppose I should just make one or two very quick comments there. I'm still not sure what Hamza's saying, but then I never am thinking about it. Then I'm never sure what I'm saying. But I assume we do accept that horrendous sufferings do exist. Yes, we don't have to be a believer in God or Allah to think that horrendous sufferings do exist. And so the problem is, how is that compatible with a loving God or a loving Allah? A wise one as well, all that stuff. Well, if you already believe that Allah exists, then obviously you're going to interpret the evidence and say, oh, well, he moves in mysterious ways, somehow it's all going to be sorted out, somehow it's because we're so tiny we don't understand how he works and so on. That's back to the mystery. No explanation at all. But if you don't already believe in the existence of Allah or God, and you look around the world reasonably for evidence, then you see all of this suffering, and you think, well, if there is some sort of supernatural God, he pretty clearly is not either all-powerful or all-good or indeed all-wise. Because otherwise, why is there so much suffering brought about on people who are utterly and completely innocent? And not just people, but also non-human animals as well. There's a vast amount of suffering in the universe, there's a large amount going on right now, and yet Allah, if there is one, seems to permit it. And it's just a sleight of hand to say, oh well, somehow it will work out, there'll be justice in the long term. Why ever believe that?
He had a second goal. I could have a second goal.
But mine was very short.
He was short. Yeah, well, you chose for it to be short. You could have a longer one. Well, I have more to say. Okay, so 30 seconds even. The point is this as well. Your view is incompatible with free will, especially when it comes to humans inflicting suffering. Because if you're a naturalist and you're a determinist, you don't really believe in free will anyway. It's just an illusion. However, that's why you need theology to really understand that free will does exist, that human beings are agents that have free will. So what we're saying is, if God makes you do good all the time, then morality doesn't make any sense.
So we cause the earthquakes, do we?
That's different. But then you said...
I'm talking about the suffering from earthquakes.
Okay, suffering earthquakes. There's a beautiful hadith from the Prophet, a statement attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anyone who dies of drowning, tsunami, anyone dies under rubble, gets paradise. They're martyrs. You don't believe in that. But I do, and I can justify it with another philosophy, you see. So the point is, you're the one who's got the issues trying to reconcile the problem. We can't reconcile it with our own philosophy, and it's consistent logically. So I don't see what the problem is.
Because you already believe in Allah, that you have to then make up these stories.
Yeah, but don't you presume that all God exists in the logical equations of it?
Sorry? No, I don't assume that God exists.
Well, therefore, don't even talk about problem of evil.
I'm assuming this conversation's over.
My question is for Peter. Let's go back to the original argument. I think we have gone into nitty-gritty things now. The original argument was the first false argument, and one of the arguments that Hamza gave was the problem with infinity. So to break the infinity, you have to assume a first cause, and you said that that first cause can be the universe itself. But the observations say, the observation in this world say that there cannot be infinity in reality.